Let me invite up Justin. Where are you, Justin? I wanted to focus especially on the connection between social and email for a number of reasons. There are the obvious connections, the ways in which some of you are already using social to amplify email, to re-engage customers through the various social tools that are there, and of course just the natural connection that social is one of the newer and important platforms for point-to-point and person-to-person, which email has always done. But there are also other reasons. We do an annual event that we'll be doing next month in DC again on marketing politics. And one of the things that politics very often is sort of the canary in the coal mine when it comes to some emerging trends in digital marketing. And one of them has to do with social and the ways in which the last election cycle taught us a lot about how social works and how to leverage the platform. And one of the things that came out in our last event last year was when we had the head fundraiser for the Trump campaign there and the head fundraiser for the Hillary campaign there. And we asked them how, since email has always been the bulwark of fundraising for political campaigns, we asked them, now that there was so much energy going into, and money going into social, if that had changed at all. And one of the things they said was very stark, that there had been a substantial shift in the amount of fundraising, even though email was still clearly king. But they were also finding substantial ROI in social and driving fundraising through social. And it was a really early, again, politics serves as a sort of early indicator of the ways in which social is driving some of the same metrics and some of the same results that a lot of people had often used email for. So we wanted to talk about the various ways in which social and email work together. And Justin is particularly good at this. Justin, I'll let you introduce yourself. You're the VP of Marketing at Travelzoo, but you've had a number of roles there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the company and about your history with it?
Sure, thanks, Steve. So Travelzoo is a media commerce company. We've been in business for almost 20 years. We send travel and lifestyle deals to 28 million consumers around the world. Primarily, it's through email, although in the last 5, 6, 7 years, we've changed that as well to obviously through our app, through social. We've become a big publisher on social as well. My team is in charge of sort of all communications, both externally for the company, consumer, and also trade. But a big focus right now is for us on social and how we connect social to what we're doing in email. Email is still our primary channel, but a lot of that ties into what we're doing in the social realm as well.
So tell us a few examples about the way you're using it, because you're using it for multiple goals. You're using the social channel for multiple goals. So give us just a few examples of how you're doing, what it looks like now.
Yeah, so social for the last maybe even 10 years, even from the early days of Facebook, has been a big acquisition driver for us, especially when it comes to acquiring new subscribers, new Travelzoo members. So we do rely heavily right now on social. When I say social, it is primarily Facebook, just because of the size of the audience there and the quality of the sort of the return that we get. But that said, we work across all channels. We do also use it for engagement, depending on the life cycle of the member. Someone who's new to Travelzoo, if they just signed up, we may send them a welcome series via email, and then we may also reach them via social in other ways with different types of content. It could be sort of top of the funnel content, high-level interesting content, or it could be more specific to deals. And then we do it also for reactivation, win back, etc. A lot with custom audiences, especially again with Facebook, but also Twitter and other platforms.
Now, you told me that you feel email and social work together towards a higher ROI on your outreach than each works independently. Tell us a little bit about the math there and how you're calculating ROI and how you see those two actually reinforcing each other.
Yeah, so independent of where someone signs up, so wherever we acquire them, whether it's organic or paid, whether it comes from social or from search, we will put them into that same flow when it comes to engaging them via social, especially via custom audiences, because it's so easy these days to really create sort of hyper-targeted, very specific groups or segments. And what we're trying to do again is, even if they don't come over to our website, even if they just engage with the content on social, it could be a video, it could be a piece of sort of general content. The idea is just to get them to understand a little bit more about the brand, about what we do, about sort of our value proposition, you know, sort of what we provide in the market. And then the idea that, again, is then maybe over time that will drive a higher email response. We have seen that if we can get them to engage over social after signing up through email, that they become a higher quality member for us over the longer term. It could be that they're 20, 30% more valuable as a member. So again, it's a great mechanism in addition to a welcome series to do that over social.
So higher user value when you've got the two of them working together.
Meaning that they're more active,
Okay.
they're more willing to engage across email or social.
Okay.
Now, we don't necessarily look to acquire people just on social, meaning just to acquire social followers. The challenge with that, and we've seen, is that we don't necessarily own that audience. It's owned by the social platforms themselves, right? And then in order to access them, in order to reach them, you often have to pay. So the value of buying a like on Facebook or a follower on Twitter or driving to that is not always like a great sort of economic equation, because you're spending, you know, upwards sometimes of 20 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents, or a dollar, and the value you can drive off them is not as much. So we'd much rather have the email relationship ultimately, but again, social can sort of augment or amplify the email relationship for us.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the relative value of those you acquire through social, since for publishers generally, media companies who are driving traffic from social, that is notoriously shallow traffic. It tends to be click and leave traffic. So how are you valuing the social media acquisition versus acquisition from other sources?
Yeah, so again, we work more towards social as to drive to ultimately to an email subscription. So on sort of an individual basis or just on social, it's not really worth that much. Although we do see a lot more, actually, depending on the content. I mean, a big focus for us is in the quality of the content and what we're actually putting out there, especially when it comes to what we publish to social. We do see high organic engagement, so I can't say it's not worth anything, but that said, it's significantly less than the value of an email address.
Are there specific tactics then that work especially well in social, the kind of content you use in social that actually drives them specifically to email?
Yeah, so we do some things like teasing some email campaigns through social. So for instance, we call the Travel Zoo is a membership, meaning that if you sign up, you're becoming a Travel Zoo member. A lot of the content that we have, a lot of the travel deals are only available to Travel Zoo members. So we have things that are exclusive to email. So what we'll use is our social platform will publish post maybe a day before and say, coming tomorrow through email, only accessible to Travel Zoo members on email. You can open this and find this deal. And so it drives social to email. We've done opposite as well, where we've actually teased, through emails. It could be, an Instagram contest or some sort of a social media campaign that you drive, obviously, traffic back from email into social, or getting people to follow you on the various channels. So we've done it both ways. Mm-hmm. What I haven't done, which I'd like to test, is also driving traffic from an email to a specific Facebook post to see if that can drive specific engagement for a post, and then give you more extension in terms of audience or reach on the Facebook post.
Does sharing play much of a role in this, in acquiring new customers or different quality of customers from social?
Yeah, so I mean, we've seen sharing since when the business started in 1998, and that moment it was more email forwarding to a friend. We'd always put in the top of the email, if you like this, send it to a friend. One of the things that we have is, so if you get someone to click on a deal and they land on our deal page, we have the sharing links prominently on there, so you get an extension value. But I do think it is interesting if you were to actually even drive email directly into Facebook, just to get that sharing happening more even quickly, and someone commenting or liking a deal, right away from an email. But yeah, so you definitely see a sort of a extension power when it comes to driving traffic.
I wanted to talk about just the costs involved. Since email, the misnomer is email is somehow a cheap or free channel, and social is notoriously expensive and increasingly expensive. How are you doing the math in terms of organic versus paid on social, and how much you're willing to spend on social to acquire customers, and how you're doing it?
Yeah, so organic and social on my team are combined, which I think is really important, because when it comes to how you publish to Facebook in particular, but across, again, all channels, it's about the content that you're producing. Really great organic content ends up being paid content for us. So just a quick sort of talk about how we look at content when it comes to publishing social. It's for sure the case that while we do get great organic reach on Facebook nowadays, just because, again, I think our content is quite good, and it's often better than a lot of the other travel companies out there, we do have to pay for it. So when it comes down to it, it is more expensive than the email channel. Email is a relatively free relationship. So we look at it more in absolute terms. You know, if we can re-engage someone, if we can, or engage them from the beginning, create a higher value member, meaning a more active member, then it's worth it to us on sort of in absolute terms. But at the end of the day, it is going to be more costly than doing it through email.
Is there a difference between the paid acquisition customer and the share? There's one who's coming through organically through a share or just through your organic exposure?
Yeah, there is a difference. I mean, it always depends on, you know, motivation for someone signing up. I mean, obviously, paid can be, oftentimes we use our deal content similar to like a New York Times or Wall Street Journal, where it'll show an article. Basically, in order to see the full details of the article, you have to sign up, and that's what we do with travel deals. The meaning that the person signing up to see that particular deal, it might mean that they book the deal or they plan their trip, and then after that point they're not interested in looking for another deal for a period of time, and so that can lessen the engagement. Whereas someone else might come and go to a dinner party and talk to a friend and hear about Travelzoo, and the friend says, I get the email every week, I love reading it, and then that person's just signing up because they just want to receive the email every week and they're excited to get the email. And so the engagement rates are going to differ versus even like a contest or a sweepstakes where that person's just signing up to receive, you know, get an entry into a contest. So of course, like there's varying levels of engagement based on how they come into us, but by and large, you know, a lot of the paid acquisition is you know, of a lesser sort of engagement than organic.
You're using it as, to tie this back to the last panel, you're using this for re-engagement too. So you have lapsed subscribers that you're going and hunting, using custom audiences on Facebook. Tell us a little bit about that program and how effective.
Yeah, so with custom audiences, we use a lot of sort of the behaviors that we've seen from people as they sign up. So like what types of content they click on. If we see an audience who's very heavy into, like, for instance, cruise deals, we'll re-engage them with cruise content. Obviously on Facebook, it's not rocket science, but we'll do it in a variety of ways though. So it could be that they clicked on a cruise deal and maybe they didn't book, or maybe they didn't click over, or they didn't go further. And the idea is that maybe we can share them other types of content that's related to that isn't necessarily more deals, but it could be, you know, the 13 tips that you need to know when you're choosing a cruise cabin, similar to, I think, what the last panel mentioned as well. So sort of like general interest content that's related to the offer or the deal they clicked on, but not necessarily the same thing, and showing that in sort of a sequential way from what they originally did. So maybe 2 weeks later, after they click on the email with a cruise deal, they might get a Facebook, they might see something in their Facebook news feed from us that's, you know, again, the ways to choose your cruise cabin, which just gets them to potentially re-engage with us, potentially go to our blog. And then maybe a week after that, we might show them another cruise deal, whether it's through email, through push, or through social. So we try to do some more sequential messaging when it comes to how we re-engage people over time.
So lean back. Don't use the stalking shopping cart style of re-engage.
Yeah, we try to avoid that.
Retargeting, but
yeah.
But sort of lean back and start taking the soft sell for a while, and then come back with the offer.
Yeah, we think about it in a way that, like, what kind of content could add value? You know, if someone's looking at cruises and what are they thinking about, like, how can you engage them through something that's interesting, worthwhile into their life, and not something that's just trying to sell them something, because ultimately that's really what's going to get them to engage with you. And then for people who haven't engaged in a while, meaning it's been 3, 6 months or more, you know, looking at the signals we got originally when they signed up, what deals were they interested, you know, 6 months ago or 9 months ago? How did they click? Where did they click? Can you tailor content to people in different places? Were they someone who came from Facebook or from Twitter, or from organic on our website, and how do you reach them in other ways?
What trends are you starting? You've got a very broad user base across a lot of different demos. What trends are you seeing in how, as you start moving across these social platforms and engaging them in more targeted ways, what preferences are you seeing in your user base about how they want to be contacted beyond email? And is social a really effective way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, some of our audience, you know, complains because they don't get enough from us. Maybe they get push notifications from us, they get email, you know, they follow us on every social channel they can. They watch our Instagram stories every weekend, and they still complain they want more. And other people, you know, just want to get transactional emails, and they occasionally want to see our Instagram stories. You know, it runs the full gamut, depending on who the person is and how they want to engage with us. What we're working towards now and into next year, similar to the Match.com example, is really communicating with people, how and when they want to be communicated with, and what platform, with what content. I mean, obviously it's sort of the holy grail, but I think we've gotten a lot further there just because we are able to sort of retain all that data, segment it, and reach people in different ways, including the emerging platforms. So like, chat or messaging apps, those can work as well. We haven't seen, our audience skews a little bit older, and so it doesn't necessarily, we participate in all platforms. We have a presence, across every sort of major social channel, and then also the emerging channels, but we want to go where the consumers are, or where people want to receive our information, and if that's through a messaging app or through a new placement, then that's fine. What we don't want to do is be annoying or be sort of like in their face. We want to be sort of available to them in the way they want to, in which they want us to communicate with them.
But for now, I mean, since all these social platforms, part of their strategy is they're moving into more direct one-to-one messaging. Facebook Messenger and Instagram has its own direct messaging. Twitter does. So you're experimenting with these, but at least so far you're not seeing a tremendous velocity of movement there. You're not seeing a lot of interaction.
It's still minimal sort of user adoption. It's hard to scale to manage. I mean, one of the really cool things is, as a brand, and sometimes I do this because I'm logged into our Twitter account and our Instagram account on my phone, and I get all the notifications on my watch actually, which is somewhat troubling sometimes, but it's interesting because it just buzzes all the time. You can see what's happening. Is when the brand responds, especially on Instagram, less on Twitter, because I think people are sort of used to brands responding on Twitter now. But if someone comments on your photo and says like, "Oh, I want to go there for my honeymoon," and then Travelzoo as a brand, we respond and say, "Oh, we're so excited. When did you get married?" Or asking more detail. It really creates a great relationship with the consumer. So I think sort of the backward and forward communication is great. Especially if we can do it at scale. It's just a matter of sort of consumers getting comfortable with that and also getting like used to doing that, and us as a brand just figuring out how we can best leverage it and do it at scale.
How are you managing, speaking of scale, how are you managing all of those different content pieces across these different channels, from email to social to multiple faces of email? That's a lot of different content iterations. Are you working out of a common pool? Does the social posts look a lot like the email posts?
Yeah, so we often create pieces of content, so like a content idea or a theme or a specific story or a deal, and then we'll actually create versions of it per platform, because obviously there's certain things that just don't work in certain ways on all platforms. You can't do the same thing across all, or even in some cases we just won't publish to certain platforms based on the actual sort of piece of content. There is like one team that I have that oversees all sort of the social communication. It's basically 2 people, so we're pretty lean in doing that, but we have a lot of outside platforms and tools to help us. But yeah, so we're very conscious about how sort of what kind of content we put to each platform and sort of the format that it makes sense. And what's great is that if there's like a great, like for instance, say there's a deal, $499 7-night cruise, you can tell that story in so many different ways through a long form blog post. You can tell that story through a Facebook post with like a gallery of photos. You could do it through an Instagram story with video content that we've shot, and also like text that overlays it. So it's like really cool how you can do different types of stories with like take one story and do them in different formats across different channels. But you have to be very mindful about how you do it across all channels.
And and as you said, you have a base that actually is watching this across channels. I mean, they like the fact, it's not just that you're using the one that reaches that particular user in a particular way, but you actually have viewers or customers who are watching you across these channels. So this is a story that's iterated for them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I want to talk, are there things you can do on social, since, as you said, you have limited data visibility on social, and that's part of the problem, and ultimately you really do want to get them into email because that's where you can get the most out of them. Are there things you can do on social that not only drive people to email, but actually increase their email engagement?
Yeah, so I mean, a big portion of our email audience comes again through social. So a lot of them do actually sign up through Facebook. So we're actually able to retain a fair amount of information when they sign up. We're doing some more tests to see what else we could capture in the early stages from a data standpoint. So that's good, because the more you know about someone on their way in, the better you can do when it comes to engaging them, whether it's email or social or any other means. So I think, yeah, I mean, I I think that we're actually using the platforms to help with email engagement in that sense from the acquisition standpoint. And then again, what we're doing with how we message people, after they sign up, particularly on social.
Is the opposite, going in the opposite direction? Are there scenarios where you want to use email to increase their social engagement? And have them do things on social?
Yeah, as part of our welcome series, we drive to follow us on social, obviously. As I mentioned before, we do, social contests or sweepstakes that we tease in email to drive people to those. So we do it both ways.
Let's wrap, and I want to go to questions in a second, if any of you have questions of Justin. Let's wrap by leaning forward as you start thinking about what you want to do with social and integrating it in with email in the future. What are the things you want to do?
Yeah, so I think as I mentioned before, that for us the most important thing is, and again, it's not too dissimilar from what the previous panels mentioned, is to really reach each of our members in the way in which they want to be reached, with the content they want to receive in the right channel, which is not an easy task. It could be everything from the time of day or the day of the week that they want to receive information from you. It could be knowing that they just took a trip and that you should sort of pull back on emails for a period of time, whether they took the trip via something they saw on us or somewhere else. It could be what kind of platform or channel, how they want to be communicated with, what's too aggressive, getting in their face too much with messaging or communication. So really tailoring things as much as possible, both with the content that we are sharing and then also how we're doing it and when we're doing it with the audience.
How do you expect to find that out? Are you going to find that out passively through behavioral triggers, or are you going to is it more effective just to ask them?
So we do a combination of both. I think probably the most effective way is to just watch their behaviors and see how they engage. Try a variety of things when it comes to testing how you want to communicate with them. There are some cases where people will tell you as well how they want to be, communicated with. But I think we'll see more through behavior. We retain all the data right now. We're sort of centralizing all of it and pulling in not only our first-party data but third-party data into more of a data hub that we can use to then action across all these different channels. But
what third-party data?
It could be anything from Experian data.
Okay,
so
right.
Once we get there.
Because I wanted to tie this back. I want to end by tying this back to something when we were talking about acquisition a lot at the end of yesterday. A lot of what you're doing when it comes to new customer acquisition, a lot of what you're doing is really social is one of the key drivers for you, right?
Yeah. Social channel is definitely a key driver. Using lookalikes off of our, highest value members. It's a big driver for us. Yeah.
Thanks, Justin. I want to open it up to questions. What?
Hi, Jessica from Match. You mentioned your member base was aging, or skewed a little older. We kind of have a similar...
We're all aging.
Yeah, right?
As we speak.
As we speak, yes. We kind of have a similar issue, and I'm just wondering if you are doing anything specific to reach the younger audience, or if you're just focused on, the current customers.
Yeah, so we approach it more as like a content publisher. So the nice thing is that our deals are our content, and the content really drives the audience. So we can have a 24-night cruise through Europe, and that will attract a certain audience, whereas we could have, with our local deal product, a $20 hamburger dinner in New York City, and that attracts a different audience. And so we have a diversity of content that drives different audiences, and then we can take those different pieces of content, those different deals, and basically communicate them or share them in different ways that reach those different audiences. So I would message a 24-night cruise and put it out into the world in a different way that I would the hamburger deal. And then that drives the audience growth from sort of the newer, younger demographics. And also with channels, like I said, Instagram Stories is a really growing channel for us. It's getting lots of engagement, and that for sure is a different, channel than that we see through email.
Instagram Stories is the one area of Instagram where you can actually, other than paid, where you can drive traffic.
You can, yes.
Right.
Yeah, if you're a verified account, you can swipe up to click over.
Are you in Snapchat?
We do a little bit, but not a lot, no. Yeah.
Anybody else? Oh, one more.
Hi, it's Jacob from Macmillan. I had a question about, have you ever tried targeting on Facebook subscribers who have unsubscribed? And Has that been successful for you at all?
To win them back, to get them to come back.
To win them back, yeah, or to just engage them on the social channel, because maybe
Yeah.
they would prefer to hear from you there versus via email.
Yeah, not quite. It's a good question. Not quite as much yet, because we don't necessarily have the means to then right now just communicate with them via social or via push and exclude email from the suite. So I wouldn't necessarily want to bring someone back into the fold as an email subscriber unless they really wanted to, obviously, if they already told us before they didn't want to receive our email. But once we get better into the place of where we can actually tailor the messaging, then for sure, because I'd love to have someone maybe they didn't want to receive our emails because they just don't like getting a lot of emails, but maybe they'd be happy to get a push notification when there's a airfare sale from their airport, and so I'd happily re-engage them. We haven't had the technical means to do that yet, but I think very soon we will.
Are you using any of the specific lead gen programs that the social platforms themselves offer?
Yeah, we've tested, so they have the sort of
they have a way of they have programs where they'll capture the email within the social post.
Yeah, we've tested them. The quality we've seen hasn't been as great as someone coming over to our landing pages and signing up directly, because sometimes it's an old email address, or so they don't know what they're signing up for. Like anything, again, it sort of impacts the engagement and activity. But so yeah, we've run on them, but not a significant amount.
Justin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're going to do a roundtable on social and email at the end of the morning. Thanks.
Thank you.